have to ask the question, is this worthy of my time, energy, and my commitment? So I find a lot of women haven't asked this question, and when they delve into this reflection on what is it that I deeply care about, I find their aspirations and their dreams begin to emerge. Whatever was buried begins to emerge. All the times that they have discounted themselves and put themselves at the back, I think those experiences emerge and we're able to talk about it in order for them to move forward. So I do think that, being in touch with this very fundamental question of what is it that I deeply care about, and do I want to define it, articulate it, and am I willing to, to put my time, energy, and commitment to it, is, I find, for a lot of people, a very, very powerful question that gets them in touch with their aspirations and their dreams.
Welcome to the Stars of Learning podcast, where your host Jyoti Ji explores the minds of the thought leaders who have vast experience and in-depth knowledge in the learning industry. Now, over to your host, Jyoti Ji.
Hello everyone, hearty welcome to season 2 of Stars of Learning podcast, and I'm your host Jyoti Ji. And each fortnight, I interview the thought leaders in the learning industry who will share their best practices in talent development. We will also discuss challenges, solutions, latest trends, tools, technology, leadership, and their journey in the learning field. So friends, I'm super excited for this show, guys. As you will agree, it's the month of March, and what is special is International Women's Day is celebrated around the corner. And I'm glad to inform that today women have excelled in each and every field, from social work to visiting space station. There is no arena which remains unconquered by women, whether it is politics, sports, entertainment, literature, technology. Everywhere it's women power all along. More and more women are entering executive ranks in business or starting their own companies. Regardless of whether they are moving up the corporate ladder or working to build a startup, women are steadily changing their conventional way of working in the corporate world too. Business regulations are more women-friendly now, and they have better access to business opportunities. Despite progress, women are scarce among senior leaders, friends. Very few women are in the CEOs of the world's largest corporation. As you may have seen, Fortune 500 companies, only 6.6% of the women are in that category. And we know that career women most often overcome obstacles, right, to achieve professional success. And as a woman, you might have any thoughts like how to mobilize my strength to realize this potential what I have. Or you might be thinking, what should you do to be a leader of influence in your team or your organization and any professional community you belong to? Or you may be wondering, how do I expand my possibilities or my capability and be a force to reckon with? If you have answered to these questions in an affirmative way, then you must listen to this episode, as we are talking to Sailaja Manacha, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, and a leadership coach who is also an author of the book Step Up. How I know Sailaja? We are part of the L&D WhatsApp group and we connected on LinkedIn. I was also part of her recent book launch, Step Up, last year, and it really inspired me, friends. I really had goosebumps looking at the powerful community she had and the prominent women leaders who were part of that book launch. And I thought I should get her on my podcast. And what more, month of March with Women's Day celebration around, I thought I should definitely ask her to be on the show. And she quickly agreed to it. By the way, I have also released my solo episode dedicating to the women to knock the baggage you carry in your life. That is when you will be empowered with positivism, as it is necessity for the development or the growth of the society, friends. With no further delay, let me introduce you my beloved guest on my podcast, Sailaja Manacha. who is a PCC certified, a psychotherapist, a transformational coach, working with senior management and leadership team with 20 years of experience. Sailaja focuses on women and leadership both within the corporate space and outside, and she has been running women-only transformational groups and workshops focusing on building their capacity and presence. She has launched Step Up, India's first 100% online women leadership course, combining psychology with cutting-edge leadership management learning. She hosts and leads powerful live mindful professional women group on Facebook too. So without any further ado, let me welcome my guest, Sailaja Manacha, author, C-level leadership coach, and supervising transactional analyst. Sailaja, welcome to Stars of Learning podcast.
Hi, Jyoti, and thank you for having me on your show. Really happy to have spoken to you.
So awesome to have you on, Sailaja. I'm glad that you are joining me today. So, Sailaja, the topic for today is about your book, Step Up, Women's Journey to Identity, Success and Power. And before we jump into this interesting conversation, I see you with a psychology background. Would love to hear from you a little background about yourself, how you got to where you are today.
Sure, Jyoti. So, yes, I have a master's in psychology, and when I finished my master's, I stepped into the corporate world, into human resources, and worked for quite a few years. And I was then head of HR with a small, boutique software company here in Bangalore. However, in 2000, I began studying transactional analysis, which is a framework of psychology. And through that studying that I was doing, I decided that I also wanted to pursue psychotherapy. So I studied for many, many years. And for quite a few years, I had my foot in two boats, which means I held a corporate job Monday to Friday. And Saturday and Sunday, I began a private practice of psychotherapy, seeing clients. I did that for quite a few years.
Okay.
Till I decided to give up my corporate work completely, and I started doing training courses with just developing my client roster. And since 2007, which is now 14 years, I have been doing coaching and working with leaders and their teams in the coaching space. So that's really been my journey. So there's been psychology, but there's also been, a background in human resources and then training and development.
Interesting. Yeah. And I was mind-blown reading the praises you have got for your book from the people all over the world, Sailaja. That's really incredible.
Thank you.
So, Sailaja, moving on, why did you decide to come up with this book, Step Up? And I know how it is going to help because I have the book in my hand, but I want you to, talk about why Step Up.
Sure. So the genesis of this work with women in leadership was really, I just stumbled into doing a program in 2010, which had a group of only women. And the 3 days that I spent doing that work was absolutely magical. It was an experience that I hadn't had before, even though I was training for so many years. And I think even the participants were clearly expressing that it was something really, really interesting for them that happened in those 3 days, being just a women's group and not having men, because otherwise most of the public courses I do, I have mixed groups.
Right.
And so I was really piqued by that whole experience, and I just decided from then on that, a few times in the year when I do announce public courses, I will do women-only courses. And so I started, I just on a lark, in fact, just decided to do that. And as I conducted those groups, I realized that there were some really smart, very brilliant, very talented women who were in these groups, who seemed to be, going ahead with their careers, like with the brakes on. Most of them had problems negotiating, sticky situations at home. Many of them seemed to have difficulties getting their voice heard, in their workplace. They weren't feeling significant enough. So I just thought it was really interesting that they were all so bright and talented, and yet they were stuck. And I noticed that in my work with them, over a few months that I ran the group, and sometimes a whole year when they stayed in the group, I noticed that when when they began to find inner map in terms of understanding their difficulties, when they were given tools that they could use to sort of change that inner map and the inner templates that we're holding, which are often unconscious to us,
True.
then I found that, the brakes came off, all the stoppers came off, and they began to move very rapidly and very powerfully. And this was really genesis of my own decision to commit to this kind of work. And so it is now 10 years of working with different kinds of women's groups. And then I realized, Jyoti, that I took this work into the corporate world, and since 2013, 2014, I've been doing this work within organizations. And I found that organizations would at the most send me 10, 15, or 20 people in a group for the year.
Okay.
And that frustrated me because I just felt that every woman should be able to make this decision and choice to study and learn and expand herself. And here the decisions happen to be left to their bosses or to HR, who have their own selection process. And I didn't want to continue that, with that situation. And so I decided to create Step Up, which is the online 4-month leadership course. And the reason I created that was precisely this, because I believe the decision to learn and grow and expand needs to be in the hand of the woman, not just in the hand of their manager or HR or their organizational, philosophy of learning. And that's how Step Up was launched as a course in 2018. And to my absolute joy, I think I've had so many batches. Every batch has 30, 40, 50 people. And my goal of meeting more and more women through this work got achieved, and so I continue to do the in-house work. I continue to run the online program. And then as I did that, Jyoti, I just felt, okay, how would it be for many, many more people, even beyond these, hundreds of women who I was meeting? How would it be for this, message and this the technology of psychology? What had happened if it would reach many more people? And I think that was where the idea of the book emerged.
Okay.
And I had so much experience running so many groups from 2010, coaching so many leaders for the last so many years, plus the Step Up program, that I just had so many stories to tell, which is what came out in the form of a book. So that's been the journey, Ruthi.
Very interesting, and that's so enlightening to listen itself, Shailaja. I'm sure the kind of a connect you have built in women, empowering women, I should say.
Sure. Thank you.
So, Shailaja, moving on, will this amazing work on connecting women with loads of opportunity, right? Somewhere the women would have buried their aspirations so deep that they don't know if they exist anymore also. Would this book help personally or professionally for them to cope up and gear?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I completely am aligned with what you said around the burial of our aspirations. And I think what I find when people read Step Up, or even, when they're on the coursework with me, I talk about a particular concept called care.
Okay.
And I find that is about 25% into the program. And I think in the book, it's also, sort of halfway through the book, I talk about this concept of care. Okay. And I find that often happens to be the pivotal place for a lot of women, because they have never bothered to ask themselves this question: what is it that I deeply care about, whether it's personally or professionally? And to define that and to articulate that, because then you have to ask the question, is this worthy of my time, energy, and my commitment? So I find a lot of women haven't asked this question, and when they delve into this reflection on what is it that I deeply care about, I find their aspirations and their dreams begin to emerge.
Okay.
Whatever was buried begins to emerge. All the times that they have discounted themselves and put themselves at the back, I think those experiences emerge, and we're able to talk about it in order for them to move forward. So I do think that, being in touch with this very fundamental question of what is it that I deeply care about, and do I want to define it, articulate it, and am I willing to, to put my time, energy, and commitment to it, is, I find, for a lot of people, a very, very powerful question that gets them in touch with their aspirations and their dreams.
Wow. So beautifully said, Shailaja. And I really like the caption of your book, Women's Journey to Identify Success and Power. That itself giving a greater message, I would say. So,
Yeah.
Sailaja, I have the book of yours in my hand.
Mhm.
I can't let it go, Every day I ensure 20-25 minutes I spend on that. And definitely there are a lot of practices which I'm practicing it. You begin with, in that book, understanding your inner world, how important it is in today's context.
I think in today's context or in any time's context for leadership, I see self-awareness as a cornerstone of leadership, Jyoti, because I think self of the leader is where one leads from.
Okay.
And when we do not even understand the self, which is who am I, how am I, this way, what has shaped me, what are my strengths, what are my edges that I still have to work with.
Right.
What are the patterns in my life that I'm proud of? What are the unhealthy patterns that continue to repeat in my life? Now, if we do not delve into these questions, then that which is unconscious and unknown begins to show up at work with our teams. It begins to show up in how we lead our teams and our organizations. And the ghosts, in some sense, the ghosts of our own unresolved issues in our own personality and our psyche begins to influence how we run our organization and our teams. So I think understanding of the self and a certain radical self-inquiry is a very, very, significant piece of leadership work. And so I think that is the relevance of starting with the inner world. So I think a stepping up journey requires a stepping in journey first.
Okay.
Yeah. Have the courage to do the radical self-inquiry. So you're stepping inwards in order to understand who is this person that I am. And from there can come a stepping up journey.
That's really amazing. And like the caption, stepping up to, stepping in is very important, very insightful, Shailaja. I think with this, you also mentioned that, there is how the adaptations in women, what is it?
Yes.
How would that help us to move out?
Sure. So, being, women, Jyoti, and familiar with the kind of socializing and family systems that we have, especially in India,
Right.
we know the kind of influences in our upbringing.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is not uncommon for girls to be socialized, to be adjusting, to be pleasing, to be nice, to not have too many requests, to be a good girl, to be polite, to be perfect all the time. So these are all part of our messages in our social upbringing. And this kind of messaging is there in educated families, in not so educated families, in small towns and cities.
Right.
It's pervasive across different varieties of families
Right.
that we have. And I find this kind of messaging constantly, whether it is culturally or whether it's from our families of origin,
True.
and ideas about who is a good woman, all our ideas about gender, these are all things that are built in pretty early in our formative years. And I find this kind of messaging is actually very limiting for today's times, where we expect women to reach high and fly high. And so I think these messages are what leads to what adaptations in my book.
Okay.
And I speak of several adaptations, but I commonly like to quote 3 or 4 adaptations, one of them being constantly being a pleasing person, a pleaser who's seeking people all the time. The second I talk about is needing to, be perfect all the time and wanting to be right all the time. And when we have that kind of adaptation, we become very hesitant to speak up, to share our thoughts, because we want them to be perfect. We want them to be right. We always want to sound smart and intelligent. Yeah, we're not just willing to play with an idea easily.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the second adaptation. The third one that I talk about is just a passivity and what I say, I can't. Yeah, so I can't do this, I can't do that. This is not me. I'm not good with numbers. I can't learn this. I've never done it before. I'm not sure I can do this at all. Yeah, so there is an overall passivity to using our own sense of agency to learn and grow and take next steps. And the fourth adaptation I call is I'm not good enough. And, a lot of times when I work with groups, Jyoti, I tell them that this adaptation of I'm not good enough, we may imagine it's only with people in the junior or mid levels, and that's not true. I have worked with many senior leaders, and even with senior leaders, it's very, very interesting how this not good enough has been present even in their lives, in some domain or the other in their lives. And so I talk about these adaptations because I find it's important for us to know what is the price or what is the cost and opportunity cost, when we follow these adaptations unawarely. And I find that when women understand that these adaptations are not written in stone, they're not etched into our personality. Yeah, these adaptations can be changed. I'm a very good example of it myself, and I often share my own stories of working through each one of these adaptations. And when we are aware, then we have the possibility of stepping out of those adaptations so that we no more lose the opportunities that are lying right in front of us, right? And moving out of these adaptations allows us to, knock on new doors, open new doors, and pick up every opportunity to shine and grow. So that's the reason why I highlight these adaptations in the book.
Interesting. And I'm able to connect with what you're saying, all the 4 P's, what you mentioned, Sailaja. And perfectionist was my strength as well as a great weakness, I would say. And it would not help. You're so perfect in everything, but then that could be a big roadblock also. Unless we realize all these 4 P's, I think that's a loads to introspect, Shailaja, what the kind of nuggets you have shared here.
And this is not a few months of work, Jyoti. Getting over our adaptations is effort, it's commitment to our growth. And I talk about the different ways of inviting abundance into our lives so that we move out of these adaptations. I find till today I continue to work with it for myself, Jyoti. It's not like I'm already reached some grand place, not at all. I find I'm a fellow journeyer with many other women who are working on this, and it is a continuous process.
And also, I like the one which says being present is like your GPS. Pay attention. It informs you how to navigate. How do one pay attention? Is there a framework which we can consciously strive to do it?
Sure. So I talk in the book on something called centering as a method to do that. Centering is just a process of allowing ourselves, our mind and our body to become calm. Otherwise you can imagine imagine a cup of water with some soil or gravel in it, Jyoti. And imagine we take a spoon and we keep shaking up that water and that mud. You know how muddy that cup can look, right?
True.
Now imagine that we take the spoon out, leave it out, and just rest that cup with no movement. Suddenly all the mud and all the gravel settles down and the water on the top is clearer. I find that this is a beautiful analogy to understand the concept of centering. So it's a very short but simple meditative practice that involves the mind, the body, and all of our senses. I write about it in the book and on my website, which is www.physis.co.in. Phys, that's how Physis is spelled. There is a centering download which is available free to anybody. So if you go, you'll get a pop-up and you can download it. It's a 7-8 minute audio that you can practice with every day. And I find this centering practice is phenomenal because it helps us to listen to the inner self much better, which we don't do because we're full of noise in our head. And the external world is full of noise. So I think this sort of calming practice is a wonderful way to start developing presence in the way I talk about it in the book. So centering practice is what I have made available for anybody who wants it. And it is also one of the very first mind-body practices that I introduce on the course Step Up.
Okay, interesting. And definitely, Shailaja, when there is a investment, people want to focus on results also, right? Now you gave us a good insight to go to your website and download. I'm
Right.
sure you would have touched many women's lives in this process. Can you
Yeah.
share one or two examples, how Step Up has helped them to scale or transform to who they are
Sure.
now?
Sure. I can, in few lines share several examples.
Yeah.
So, without taking any names, let me talk about a lady who attended Step Up, had always had a goal to write a book. And, she attended Step Up and found the power to move out of her adaptation of, perfection. And I always have to be right and ready. And she went ahead and wrote a book in 2018
Okay.
is when she wrote that. So that's one. The other story I can say is about a lady who is from the technology and works in a multinational, is a project manager, was always playing a small game despite having 10, 15 years of work experience. And through attending Step Up, I think she found the energy around wanting to expand her careers, work in a different geography, and to become mobile despite having her family and her child in Bangalore. She decided to take, a step up by expanding her horizons of her professional role and moved to a different country for a 1 year project where she was then more client facing, and that meant a huge growth. Not only in exploring her potential, but also in her role within her organization. I've had educators, who work in, a unique education philosophy in a school, decide to take up the cause of their education right to the Ministry of Education in Delhi, and finding the energy and the language and the drive to do something like that. I've had, filmmakers from Mumbai who have been part of Step Up and who decided to really expand their possibilities in terms of approaching far more film houses in terms of making offers to them in terms of what they can do as a filmmaker. So really, I've had a very wide variety of women, but I've also had, given that we're in Bangalore and a lot of my clients are tech companies, I've had a lot of software people who are who are developmental leads, development managers, who have done things like expanding their roles, asking for new roles, moving from back end to being more client facing. I've had people completely shift from one business to another just through negotiating with senior leadership different aspects for their role. So I think all of these are very, very powerful outcomes for women who have always second guessed themselves, hesitated, not had the self-confidence to be in these kind of conversations at all. So I think, these are just some of the, outcomes that people talk about.
Yeah.
But I think there's a common outcome that I definitely want to mention, Jyoti, which I never talk about too much in the book or even in my brochures, that they just feel that they are much more in charge of their life. They feel calmer. They feel like they know exactly what they are doing and why they are doing it. And they have changed many of their habits in order to become far more focused and far more outspoken. Yeah, so I don't actively talk about this, but I find for many, many, many women, this has been an automatic, unarticulated outcome on the course.
And I should share that I'm able to consciously take charge of what I think I have to do by reading your book, Shailaja. Thank you for that.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so Shailaja, I have another one interesting, International Women's Day and, looking at the reports, how women are scaling and all of that. But the sad part is only 7% of the women are in the leadership role at corporates. And women are falling behind at every level, right? Because of the
Yes.
stages of their life, marriage,
Yes.
children, and, many other things. But the moment they even get into the C-suite ladder, there is more gliding there. You see more less number. From
Yes.
your experience, does Step Up challenge this barrier and help the women leaders to explore, to be that leadership potential there?
I think it does, Jyoti, because I find, again, going back to this question on what is it that I really deeply care about professionally and where do I want to put my heart, mind, and soul and effort and time and energy has been a phenomenal question for a lot of senior people because I find that question really begins to, bring a great degree of focus into the actions that we are doing. Otherwise, we can just, we're all very good at becoming busy, Jyoti. Yeah, I think it is part of the current discourse of the corporate world that, busyness.
Yes.
And people think of busyness and activity and, as being the way to success. And I think I'm really questioning that because I don't think busyness does that. Instead, focus does that. So I think it's worthy asking what is it one is doing and why is one doing it? And if that effort is rolling up into some significant professional care of mine, if it's not rolling up into that, we need to drop it. So I think a lot of, middle to senior women find this kind of, reflection very, very valuable because it really focuses their energy powerfully.
Okay.
I also do step up within the corporate world as a longer program, Jyoti. So I work over 1 year. And sometimes over 12 months, sometimes over 15 months with a group of women leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And I find the way it helps them is, I think a lot of what we do as leaders is achieved through conversational competence, Jyoti. Yeah, think about it. All kinds of situations, whether we're leading teams or we're meeting with stakeholders or we're, developing business or we're dealing with clients, our conversational competence has to be ace, absolutely at the top. So I find a lot of the women leaders through Step Up are learning to hone their conversational competence to get bolder and more courageous and more vulnerable in their, sticky conversations that they're having. They're finding the voice to ask more difficult questions and the more important questions, which sometimes I find only women seem to be thinking about, not the men. But now they're finding a way to include those questions, to their organization. And I find all these are very, very a big steam, for anyone's career. It's really like the wind, beneath your wings, which allows you to grow and, be seen and be known as a particular kind of leader, which then automatically leads you up the ladder. So this has been my experience in coaching women leaders.
Interesting. And Shailaja, you spoke about deeply care about yourself to design your life. And
Yes.
You also mentioned about centering practice and all of that.
Yes. Yes.
And you also mentioned in your book as self-care, we should know to practice the pause.
Yes.
Can you explain what magic
What's
would
that?
this do to my
Yeah.
listeners?
Sure. The centering practice is the pause that I'm talking about. Earlier on our talk, we spoke
Right.
about centering.
Yeah.
And even on my site, you will see the banner talks about pausing. I find that when we enter the world of work, especially those of us who hold big dreams for ourselves, sometimes we find we're like on a roller coaster, Jyoti. Yeah, or we are just running, and sometimes we're not even sure why the hell we are running and where is this running going,
Yeah.
right? So we are really on a treadmill of some kind. We're running at a certain pace. And I find this doesn't help because either we are filling up our calendars with activity which doesn't actually hold meaning for us, or we are filled with busyness in our life going towards some goal that really doesn't matter to us so much, or we are exhausting ourselves into burnout because there is only that much that a human being can do, right? So
Right.
we are finite, our time is finite, and so we cannot just go on endlessly. So I think the pause is a beautiful idea to integrate into our life, Jyoti, because the pause allows us first and foremost to be centered and balanced. The pause allows us to listen inside of ourselves. Is this getting too much? Yeah, is this the direction I want to go? Why do I want to do it? Our own self-reflections we do not listen to because we just do not provide the time for us to pause and take a breath and look with fresh eyes. So I think the pause, also allows that. And I think the pause is so important, especially for women, I think, because we are people who juggle a lot. We have many things on our plate. And, people have already given us a lot of wonderful strokes for being multitasking people. And so we have really taken that to heart and we're constantly juggling a lot of balls in the air. And I find this juggling is very, very tiring.
Okay.
So I find the pause has many, many uses for us, both to listen to our inner voice, to reflect, to stop, and to be involved in only meaningful activity, not just any activity, and more than anything, to care for ourselves. Yeah, to just relax, to sit down, do something that is relaxing and joyful for us. Even if it's as simple as having, a cup of tea and, walking on the grass or looking at trees. Even this is a big blessing in today's kind of life. So I really think the pause is a wonderful practice, and I'm a big follower of it. But also I really encourage a lot of people to include it in their lives.
Sure. Thanks for that insight, Shailaja. And I have this book in my hand, and definitely it's been a guided tour for me. Every chapter and a lot of practice. Every after end of every chapter, at least 2 case studies which we need to reflect and practice. Right. So, can you share your idea behind it? Why such?
Why did I write it like this?
Yes.
Okay. I find, Jyoti, that a lot of our leadership books tell us what we are supposed to do. They don't always tell us how we are supposed to do it. Yeah. And there is often no, no detailed guidance for how we can access that learning and those behaviors in a systematic way. So therefore, I said I didn't want to write a book that just had gyan and theory, but a book that invited a reader into reflectiveness, into this pause, and to invite a leader into beginning to think through this self-inquiry that I think is the cornerstone of leadership. Because when we start doing that and we start using the practices in the book, that's when we can begin to see, okay, whatever is written in the chapter or in those pages, can it work? Yeah. Otherwise, if we just have it all in our head, and never bring it into our behavioral dimension, or if we only leave concepts in our head and never bring it into conversations and into our work day on an everyday basis, how do we know whether what is written in a book can work? So I really think that writing a book with reflections and with practices was my way of making this book far more accessible to more people so that they can begin to see it come alive in their work, not just an idea on the pages of a book. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also heard you saying that, reflect on yourself, like who am I? What am I, kind of a thing, right? And we also, the upbringing and, the family or the culture, sometimes there are internal barriers which women go through. That could be believing themselves, family, social norms, or it could be gender, many other lenses, right? They put unconsciously to women, like a multitasker, what you said.
Yes.
What is your advice? How we can break this huge pattern to identify our own strengths or be ourselves?
Sure. And I think I talk about that, in the book where I list, about 10 different what I call stop patterns. I call them reds. And for every red signal, it is also a green signal which allows us to move forward, and go ahead rather than being stopped. So I find once we identify these patterns through the book and seeing all those red patterns that are stopping us, I provide in the book green patterns that we can put together as, several green practices. And I find that these are like mantras, Jyoti, just like how we, say our prayers every morning. I tell people this is like a prayer. Yeah, it's a prayer for yourself. There's nothing religious about it or anything. It's just your deep love and commitment for yourself and for your growth. So take these green practices and begin your day with those practices. There are some women just this evening, like literally 1 hour before this recording, I got a message from one of the Step Up participants in Delhi saying that how committed she is to these green practices. And she starts her day and she said, I feel so good and I'm now addicted to using that for myself because I'm seeing it rapidly changing me. So I find putting these practices into your daily life every day, starting your day with even twice a day if you want to, to use these practices, it really rewrites, or if you have to use software language, then it reprograms us in order for new behaviors and new actions to emerge from the same person because we're rewriting our story. And I tell a lot of women that, we've written a lot of unhelpful things into our story. And the good thing is we have sole editing rights of our story. Nobody else has it. So go right ahead and use all the editing tools that you have to change what you do not like and to put in, new narratives and more powerful practices into your story, because that will start manifesting in your life. So this is what I practice and I also teach, Jyoti.
Okay. And so moving on, Sailaja, you have a phenomenal stepping up tools with that 5-finger solution.
Yeah.
I've not, read that completely, but then I just saw that figure and it was so inspiring. How does this operationalize in the process?
So the 5-finger solution comes from the last section of the book, because I think of them as stepping up tools. Okay. And they are all tools that are conversationally alive, which means they come into practice conversationally with other people. And so, for example, I talk about requests. Now, request is a simple word. It's just an English word. But in the professional context, I find requests are very, very powerful in understanding it, because when we lead teams, we're constantly having to make requests. We can make them effectively, or we can make them very poorly. And when we make them poorly, then it impacts the results and the outcomes that we have with our team. I also find that women are not very good at making requests. We are hesitant. We feel over-obligated. We feel the other person may feel bad. We are unable to listen to a no. We have a lot of problems with requests. And so not making requests is a big issue. And learning how to make powerful, big, fat requests, I think is a leadership skill. So that's one of the 5 fingers. Then I also talk about offers. Again, offers such a simple English word, you offer something. But I find that offers is very powerful to understand professionally, because each of us has strengths. We have some unique gifts that we bring to our teams. We have a constellation of different strengths that can become available to our team, to our business, to our managers. But we still wait for people to ask us for things. And I tell people, if you know that these are your strengths, what kind of offers are you making to your boss? How are you taking care of something that your boss cares about, right? How are you making offers to take something off, his or her plate, so that you are making a powerful, valuable offer to your team? So rather than playing the waiting game, how about you put your hand up, and put your hand up not for, simple things that you can do, but put your hand up for a complex, valuable offer that you can make to your boss, to your client. So that's the second finger. So like this, I talk about 5 different fingers, and I find that each of them has the capacity to change our public identity in our organization, Jyoti, because our public identity is our business. Nobody's going to change that for us. If we want to shift that public identity, then we have to show up differently, whether it's to our team members, or whether it's to our our bosses, or whether it's to our clients. We have to show up differently in our behaviors and in our conversations. And I find the 5-finger solution has lots of ideas to do that.
Interesting. And I'm sure, Sailaja, in any model, right? I come from a little bit of audit background. So you also need to look at the positives and the risks also, right? What would be the challenges? What would be the toughest part for anybody to practice this? What should they be mindful of?
Sure. And I think one of the biggest enemies of learning is that we sit with our self-doubt. And 2, we do not practice. So, Jyoti, I often say this when I teach, that we become what we practice. Even today we have become because we have practiced this that we have become today. Including ineffective stuff. So if we do not practice the new things that we want to manifest, how can they manifest? Because we become what we practice. So I find that, on the courses that I do, I find those who do not practice, they're lagging behind, Shruti. They take, they don't take as much from the course as those who bring their questions actively. They take those practices and every day they experiment in a conversation with their boss, with their teams. They're always doing something small in terms of a learning step for themselves. And I find this is their biggest win. Yeah, that they have decided to practice the green mantras. They have decided to overcome, and despite their fear and low confidence, they have taken a step forward and they practice and they bring their questions back into coaching. So I find that practice is everything. So if there is a downfall, it is because of not being fully committed to our learning and not practicing.
That's a great insight, which we have to be mindful. Yeah, that commitment is definitely needed. So, friends, it's time to change the lens. Lot of nuggets, the mantra, the pause, the deeply care, and the adaptation techniques have been shared by Shailaja. And she also says it's time to change the lens. And we've all have heard the glass half full and the glass half empty analogy, right? Well, it's all about the perspectives, and Shailaja will provide you with a deeper understanding of who you are. And if you need a change in your perspective, she runs this wonderful course. So, Shailaja, do you want to talk about this thrilling and adventurous program you have?
Sure, sure. So the course is called Step Up. So if you look for it, please look for Step Up. If you go to website, then there's an entire page, testimonials, curriculum, etc., dedicated to the Step Up course. There is a batch that's running right now, and so we are closed at this moment. But a new group will open up in August because Step Up is offered publicly, and I offer it only 2 times in a year. It is basically 100% online, Jyoti, which means there's material, content, videos, worksheets, reflections, a discussion forum. Everything is provided on a portal, and do all the content in your own time. So there are sometimes women who are doing it at 11 p.m. after, the house has gone to sleep.
Yeah.
But I notice sometimes people are logging in at 5 o'clock because that's their quiet time and that's when they study. I have people in Delhi telling me that they look at content on the metro. So honestly, the content is accessible anywhere, anytime, from any location and in your time and space.
Okay.
The only thing that is live, Jyoti, are 8 calls. Yeah, and those 8 calls, the dates and times are announced in advance, and that's when everybody logs in, and I'm live because I do answering questions. They bring their questions, their issues. We sort them out on that 1-hour call, and we have 8 such live calls in 4 months. So that means almost every 2 weeks there is a call. And then there are other support systems like the discussion forum on the learning portal. There is a WhatsApp group. People are constantly sharing their wins, asking for strokes for themselves, asking questions. I respond to them there. So it is an interactive 4 months journey, where content is online, done in their own time. And the only time that we connect live with each other are on those 8 calls. So that's what the Step Up course is about. It's open only to women with at least 7 or 8 years work experience, Jyoti, because the content I'm talking about is not so palatable for junior women. I find you have to be at a particular place in order to, engage with the kind of topics and the questions that I have on the course. So typically above 7 or 8 years experience, women join it. And the next course opens in August 2020.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything else you would like to add that will be of value to my listeners, Shailaja?
I think just, tell people, pick up the book because the book is, a lot of the course is already in the book. And that is the very point of writing the book because I really wanted more people to be able to access this even if they cannot be on the course. There's a lot that you can begin to learn and integrate just with the book. So do that. And otherwise, of course, Lead Powerful, Live Mindful is a currently, closed Facebook group. So if you look for it, it will pop up on Facebook and you can ask to join. And there again, quite a few resources, videos, different things that I have put up, which are freely available to anybody on that group you can access. And of course, be in touch. The open Step Up program, which comes up in August, which means enrollments will happen in July. And so be in touch so that you can be on it because I only offer it twice a year publicly. Because otherwise Step Up runs in-house, Jyoti. There are many of my clients have the Step Up program within their organization, which means, for 4 months, they have their own cohort from within the organization who's going to Step Up.
Okay.
But I wanted Step Up to be available publicly to just anybody who wants to join, any woman professional, right? So that public program is available only twice a year.
That's a wonderful opportunity you're creating for women. And my last question, how do you see learning trends in 2020?
I really think that a big trend that I'm seeing picking up, and it has already picked up, a learning trend is coaching, whether it's one-to-one or group coaching. And I think that has really picked up. The second one that I see is moving from just doing training programs to doing ongoing learning, which means a group goes through a learning experience over a couple of months or over an entire year with goals that need to be achieved at the end of the year. So I really think that's another trend that's picking up. In fact, most of my work, 80% of my work has moved already in that direction, Jyoti. I no longer just do 1 day or 2 day kind of programs at all. A lot of my work is ongoing. That's the second trend. And I think the third trend I see is moving from just transactional training and development to something more transformational, which involves, a certain focus on the self of the individual. Yeah. So I really see that some aspects of psychology becoming quite significant. And if you see, a lot of really good leadership material today, a lot of it is focusing on the individual and not just on models and ideas and concepts.
Interesting. Yeah. So friends, this book is going to be a game changer for you. And if you are seeking to make a difference and are ready to design the new futures and new possibilities, then this book is a must, as it is packaged with loads of practical guides and necessary tools. I think Sailaja has already shared a couple of nuggets here. You want to be a powerful leader, this book is definitely a must have in your library. And it's just not for women. Even I felt, when I was having a discussion with my husband, he was also taking benefit and getting insight from that. So I don't say it is only for women. I think anybody can apply. Do you resonate with that, Sailaja?
Yes, totally, Jyoti, because that's been such a happy surprise for me, because I've had a lot of men coming back and telling me that they're reading the book and that they find it so valuable, and they're often asking me, why is it that I'm talking about these patterns only in women? Because they're saying even I identify with it.
Right.
I say that's true, because I am talking about a human being, and we are not that different as human beings. So a lot of the book, I'm talking about human nature and human beings. However, I say that I use the gender lens, Jyoti, because some of these issues are multifold prevalent in women. If they are available 10, in a sample of 10, if 3 men have it, then I would say in a sample of 10, 8 women have those issues, right? And therefore, I found value in bringing the gender lens. But of course, a lot of things are very much applicable even to men, and a lot of men are, writing in to tell me that they're enjoying the book. In fact, at some of my client companies, I've had their leaders telling me to run Step Up for their men. And I say, what, I can't do that because the content is very much speaking to women. So unfortunately, I can't run it for men. But I have even had those kind of requests in the last year.
Okay, interesting. So my wonderful listeners, there is much more insights to know about our guest. And Sailaja, we have not done with the interview. There is a surprise element for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have lined up few powerful questions to engage, empower, and enlighten. And that's the mission of my podcast. So are you ready for the powerful questions?
Sure. Bring it on.
Okay, great. According to you, what is your star moment?
Okay, I think my star moment was definitely my book, coming out. My book launch, happened in the India Business Literature Fest in Pune, which was surrounded by business literature. And that's where my book was launched with some, fabulous luminaries on stage. And I think that was definitely like a star moment because I was having flashlights and videos and, those kind of experiences and autographing the book. And so, yeah, I think I connect with that as being a star moment.
Okay. And what inspires you to do everything that you do today?
I think I have what I care about etched in my mind all the time, Jyoti. It's a question that I ask myself every month in order to even begin seeing whether I want to change my focus and my energy towards a certain goal. So I think for me, my professional and my personal cares are very, very clear. And so that's what inspires me in the morning to get up and do what I have to do.
You already own a company. What's
Yeah.
one thing you would do differently in learning in your company?
What do you mean when you say in learning in your company?
Because, I come from the learning and development background, and I
Yes.
believe continuous learning is something crucial.
Yes.
And how do you owning a company, how are you seeing learning?
Got it. Okay. So I think I totally resonate with your continuous development idea. So I think I'm a student for life, which means at any given time, I'm always on a course. I'm always studying something. I always seem to have a teacher. For the last 20 years, it's been like that. And to this day, it's the same. And I think the second thing that I have done, and I also have a coach.
Okay.
So I have a teacher, I have a coach, and I have a learning community that I belong with. So every time I always have partners with whom I can discuss and move forward with ideas.
Interesting. And what are the three most important things you would like to accomplish right now?
Okay, so this year I've just begun writing my second book. So I want to get somewhere with that book this year. I have no intention of finishing it because I have quite a bit of research I have to do for it. So for this year, definitely I want to be at least 50% complete there. I want to start a new course online on transactional analysis, which is a very powerful tool to shift communication and relationship patterns in life and work. And I want to take that program online. So I'm working to develop that. And I also want to explore a certain theme, connected with senior women, which means I want to launch like a step up program, but I don't yet have a name for it, but it's for women with a minimum of 15 to 20 years work experience. And I want to launch 1 year open to public sort of a group for women of that caliber and that stage of their careers. So those are the top three things that are on my plate right now.
More power to you. All the very best in that, Sailaja. If I may ask you, what are your strengths?
What are my strengths? I think my biggest strength is that I'm a very committed learner, Jyoti. Yeah, so I always have learning goals for myself, and I find the best people whom I can work with and learn from and learn under. So I think of this as a very big strength. So I'm not somebody who just rests on past laurels that I have. I think I'm constantly on a learning journey. So I find this is a very big strength. I also think my strength of understanding human psychology has proved to be an absolute powerhouse for me because it really allows me to navigate all my relationships, whether it be personal or whether they are with clients, in a very, very powerful, sensitive, and forward-moving way. So I think this also I find is a strength. And I think my third strength is that I'm not somebody who just keeps running on the treadmill, Jyoti. I pause. I ask why I'm doing what I'm doing. And only then I put my full energy behind it. And I feel that has helped me be creative, put this book together, put my courses together, develop collaborations in different kinds of projects. So I see this as a strength that I'm not just running, like a headless chicken doing all kinds of things. I really ask what is the purpose of my presence, in this world? What is my purpose? And then I decide to put energy behind it.
Oh, wow. And with that, with continuous learning, what's the best book you have read this year or any time you want to recommend to my listeners? We definitely have Step Up in the list.
I have a range of books. I have almost 14 different books that I'm reading for this year.
Oh,
But
wow.
I think the top of my list, which I absolutely love and I highly recommend, is a book called Reboot, written by Jerry Colonna. And he's again very aligned with a leader finding their inner story and through that to develop their leadership. So I feel very aligned with those kind of themes.
Okay. And what are the characteristics of the best boss or a mentor or a coach you ever had? And what made that person great for you?
It's hard to find one characteristic, but I think I would choose authenticity, which means whether it's a boss or a leader, my current coach and teacher, I find the common part that attracts me to them is their capacity for authenticity, which means they know themselves. They are very aware of their thoughts, feelings, reactions, and they're able to articulate it in a respectful and sensitive and challenging way towards me. And I find that quality very, very attractive for me, a certain authenticity in communication. And I think the second quality that I find is very powerful for me in leaders is generosity. And I feel it is much lacking in today's corporate culture. But I think as leaders, we have to see ourselves as bigger and with a high capacity to give, to provide, and to guide, to mentor. And for that, we really have to have a spirit of generosity. So I think that's another very attractive quality for me.
Okay. And are there any tools that you use on a daily basis to be a better you?
The biggest tool that I use is the pause.
Okay.
Centering. It's sometimes a practice that I have to use more than once a day, especially on a rough day. So that's a very significant tool. And I think the other tool is just self-care. I think that's a very important tool, especially for women.
Okay. And any habit you're practicing which has made you successful in whatever you do?
A significant habit that I practice is asking myself often enough, what is it that I care about? And am I paying attention to what I care about?
And Shailaja, we have come to an end of this interview. Before that, I have one question. How can people get in touch with you to get more insight, collaborate? Where can they reach out to you? I know you gave your company website address.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll just repeat that. So www.physis.co.in. That's my company website.
Yeah.
And so you can, contact me through that. Whatever I do is usually there. All course announcements are usually there. And so that's an easy place to get in touch with because, whatever I do is available there.
Okay.
And so LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me. I have my personal profile, which is Sailaja Manacha. And I also have the Physis profile on LinkedIn. Facebook is also a possibility. There's the Physis page, but there's also Lead Powerful, Live Mindful. That's the closed group that I spoke about. That's also available and, as a way to contact. Yeah, so these are all possibilities, Jyoti.
Sure, Shailaja, thanks for that. On a closing note and that last question, your advice for those who want to accelerate their career in talent and development.
I really think because I claim, in my teaching and in my book, that the self of any person is the powerhouse place from where to learn to be a leader. I find investing in yourself in courses that are connected with self-awareness and understanding yourself in a far more deeper way. I would highly recommend, all learning and development and talent, facilitators to put themselves through a couple of years and a couple of those courses because it's like polishing a diamond, the more you put yourself through those kind of processes, which are not just about skills, but behavioral, psychological, those kind of processes, I really find it allows us to tap into our deep inner potential.
Sure. That's an amazing and great insight, Shailaja. So, guys, all the links and resources which we have discussed in this episode, will be made available in my show note page of my podcast, Stars of Learning, and also on my website, prajvitaknowledge.com. That is PRAJVITA knowledge.com for your quick reference. Thank you so much, Sailaja, for being on this show, Stars of Learning podcast, and sharing all your wisdom for women and how to step up with all practical and result-based approach, right? And I really enjoyed all the key elements which you have shared. It was immensely insightful for me and very useful. It was a great learning to me, and I'm sure my listeners will also see value in it. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
I really appreciate that you have researched the book so well and came up with those questions. I think that showed me the effort and the time that you have put into developing your podcast. So I'm very appreciative of your queries. Thank you so much, Jyoti. Really happy to be here.
Great to have you on my show. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sailaja. If you have got any learning or motivated hearing to Sailaja, then make sure you do share this podcast with your friends and post it on Facebook, Twitter, Insta, and tag me and Sailaja. And do let your friends know about this amazing information you have learned, and let this piece of information help many others to engage, enlighten, and empower. And I'm always grateful to everyone who tune in, who subscribes and leave a review for our podcast. By the way, if you haven't done that, that would mean a world to me. So head over iTunes and take a minute to write a quick review. It will help our podcast grow, and I really appreciate your support. Bye for now. Take good care of yourself and go out and do something engaging, enlightening, and empowering. Thank you.